Welcome back, Astro listeners, to Star Lady Soul Reader Network. This is your host, Media Monk, and as always, I have our shining star of the Zodiac on the line. It's Star Lady. Hi, Star Lady.
Hello, Media Monk.
And we all know Star Lady is Kim Marie, the managing director for our network. We continue to provide the finest EA course materials to certify new astrologers. And we also have a lot of people coming to our website for our forecasting webinars, our Astro Library, lots of other stuff that you can take a peek at. Go to www.evolutionaryastrology.net, call 605-348-5111 to schedule your personal time with Star Lady, Kim Marie, and or to ask any questions about the EA course or the website. And so here, kind of a powerful time of the year. We've got the new moon in Scorpio, and I'll turn it over to you, honey.
All right. Thank you very much, Media Monk. Well, everyone, as he said, the new moon is going to be Friday, November 1st at about 9.5 degrees Scorpio. I thought I'd just give you the evolutionary astrology mantra I made for Scorpio many moons ago. I metamorphose myself with evolving self-reliance. I metamorphose Scorpio, myself, with evolving self-reliance Taurus. And there is the Scorpio-Taurus polarity for you. You know, the USA presidential elections always fall when the sun is in Scorpio in those mid-degrees. This is our last podcast before the USA presidential election. I suspect I'll be talking about the election for a few more podcasts because we have a Mercury retrograde, communications, and Sagittarius showing up right after the election. So I've been saying no matter what happens on November 5th, there's going to be some chaos for a while. Let's just jump right in. I have been feeling more and more hopeful that I think Kamala Harris will actually pull off that electoral college majority. Donald Trump is not doing himself any favors. I've been saying all year long, Jupiter retrograde in Gemini in the month of October would show his mental decline and his mental events. And so it's almost like we've been seeing his mental decline for so long. It's like everything else that comes out of his mouth, we're a little numb to it. And by the way, long-time listeners, thank you. You pretty much know where my opinion is. I'm going to stand up for truth as best as I know it, and this gentleman doesn't know how to tell the truth. So Jupiter retrograde in Gemini, retrograding back over his North Node, ego he's striving to create. It will go back over his Uranus in Gemini, that's the brain. It will oppose his moon in Sag 3 times along with that South Node. It's showing us through astrology the acceleration of his mental decline. Will there be a mental event, as I sometimes say? Stay tuned. I don't know if we'll see a spike in one or not. But I do have hope that there are enough people in the country that are just a little tired. Oh, let's call it the mess he's created. I'll try and stay away from the word garbage. Oh, by the way, both presidents have been, President Biden, former President Trump, they have both been caught on tape calling the other side garbage. Probably the aspect that a lot of astrologers have been looking at is the fact that we're going to have a Mars Pluto opposition November 3rd, a couple of days before the election. Pluto is the soul and its unconscious desire nature, separating, returning desires. Those desires are made conscious via Mars, that instinctive desire to be calm. when they're at that opposition, you've got that objectivity potential, but you also have that polarity, and you've got, two rather strong-willed planets representing our soul nature, both on an individual level and on a collective level. Mars is going to be 29 3/4 Cancer, quarter of a degree away from going into Leo, which it will do on November 3rd after the opposition. And Pluto is freshly direct at 29 3/4 Capricorn, just a quarter of a degree from going into Aquarius. So that Cancer-Capricorn, it is like, to put it in context, and again, any of the 12 archetypes can be distorted. They can all be naturally expressed. If we look at that Cancer-Capricorn from its almost sense of woundedness, we just want to protect home, family, and apple pie. We want to protect, we want the rules we have in place to stay in place. We want to freeze time. We don't get to evolve. We don't get to move forward. And so it can emphasize some of the triggers of fear that some souls will have, especially in consensus consciousness, that they are so close to Leo Aquarius, it slips through, especially when we look at the last 15 years of Pluto and Capricorn and, denial of climate change, for instance. Well, this Mars-Pluto opposition, let's pray for peace, that it doesn't create more violence on the eve of the election, because that is the potential of their opposition. It's actually going to fall in Donald Trump's 12th and 6th houses. Pluto has moved into Donald Trump's 6th house over the last year, and in general terms, that Virgo 6th house deals with health and wellness. It's Mercury ruled. It's a left brain house, and so it might even be with Pluto's transit into his 6th house. By the way, I use potpourri houses. That it could even be just accelerating a little bit of that mental issues for him. And that Mars in late Cancer in his 12th, he can't believe he's not taking up the oxygen as much as he thought he could, or as much as he used to. There's almost like a weariness. It's like he's going into his shadow, so to speak. Mars is conjunct his Venus, brings that in, his values, his resources. He's only running. Well, one of the major reasons he's running is to stay out of jail. So stay tuned. The Mars-Pluto opposition in Kamala's chart, Mars is in the 2nd. The resources, the values, the self-reliance. And she's had transiting Pluto in her 8th house for several years now, and so it's almost like she is learning how to step into her power, becoming more and more self-reliant. Now, devil's advocate, Pluto in her 8th house could be the devastating loss if she does not pull the Electoral College, even though she will most likely have the majority of votes. I don't know, I've been becoming more hopeful in the last few weeks that we get to turn a page, so to speak. New moon in Scorpio, as I said, we don't always have a new moon on a presidential election, but we always have that sun on election day. It's right there around 12, 13, 14 degrees Scorpio. And Scorpio is a death and rebirth sign. And so every 4 years, this country has the potential to just have this death and rebirth from Republican to Democrat to Republican and Democrat, back and forth every 4 to 8 years, whatever, depending on how it goes. And so it always does portray that division we have in this country. By the way, if you followed any of my conversations on the USA chart, every July 4th chart 1776. Has three major aspects. We won't take that time right now. Go search me on YouTube. There's three major aspects that just have always revealed how this country ebbs back and forth between include versus exclude. Give me your tired, you're hungry, you're poor, build a wall. In evolutionary astrology, we say that the patriarchal distortions, okay, they're always, taking, hoarding, and excluding. Natural law principles are giving, sharing, and including. And so it can almost be like the USA is an example of this evolutionary process. Are we going to exclude or include? And as we get more populated and the planet gets a little smaller, we get along better in the sandbox. If we get along better, stay tuned. We shall see. Now, this new moon in Scorpio, 9.5 degrees, it is making waning trines, both sun and moon, to Saturn at about 13 Pisces. And Saturn in Pisces, as I've said, is the reality checks. Does anybody remember when Saturn went retrograde the end of June, June 29th, and followed by July 1st, Neptune retrograde? That was the fallout President Biden had after the first debate with Donald Trump. Remember that? I was literally depressed. Well, here we are 4 months later, the end of Saturn's retrograde cycle. It's not going to go direct until the full moon of Taurus, November 15th. Saturn goes direct November 15th. And again, it's just shy of 13 degrees Pisces. Saturn stationary retrograde, that end of June, July, especially in Pisces, it's just the reality that can no longer be supported. And in Pisces, it just dissolved and crumbled in front of us. Well, Saturn direct, having a 4-month review on what's real, now goes, okay, this is my new foundation in life. How do I go forward with it? And so Saturn direct in mid-November also can portray. And right now, with the trines from the new moon, Scorpio, Pisces, water, emotions, it's almost the emotional energy of our country. Pisces just being weary of all the fighting and animosity, at least perhaps for a majority of the people, going, we all have neighbors, we all have family members that we're politically opposed to or politically differ with. But we still have our connections, so to speak. We have our emotional connections with family. One more Thanksgiving, we probably won't discuss it around the table. So I think the new moon waning trines to Saturn almost direct also sends us this emotional message again that, can we just choose to move forward? Can we choose to let go what doesn't work for us anymore? Stay tuned. That first week of November, there's a lot of aspects going on, not just the new moon November 1st and Mars opposing Pluto November 3rd. In between that, November 2nd, Jupiter, our right brain, intuition, growth, expansion, hanging out retrograde 20.5 degrees Gemini. It's going to make let me get this correct. Excuse me for looking at my notes, everybody. It's going to make the second of 3 waxing sextiles to Chiron. Chiron's hanging out retrograde at 20.5 degrees Aries. And so, distortions of this violence. Chiron is the wounded healer. And in Aries, if we feel threatened, if we feel attacked, if we feel fearful or scared, Chiron in Aries can get very aggressive. It can fight. But Chiron in Aries, especially retrograde, can also be seeking ways to get along, and it can be initiating Aries, new ways of healing, the new ways of looking at how we can heal personally, how we can heal collectively. Jupiter 60 degrees, 1/6 of the circle from Chiron, waxing sextiles. Jupiter and Gemini, Jupiter again, right brain. Well, Gemini is the opposite sign of Jupiter Sagittarius rulership. And so Jupiter and Gemini can just be opening up for curiosity. I mean, as I said earlier, specifically in Donald Trump's case with Jupiter and Gemini over his North Node Gemini planets, we can see the cognitive dissonance. Dissonance, is that how you pronounce that? We can see the confusion, Gemini. This or that. Is it a truth or is it a lie? Da-da-da. The Jupiter in Gemini in its natural state can open up to curiosity. And the waxing sextiles to Chiron can go, wait a minute, how can we do this differently? Wait a minute, what are my other choices here? Can I entertain a new thought? Can I entertain a new idea? Stick with that as best as you can in your world, because I'm going to just try and say this as clearly as possible. Jupiter is transiting Gemini for a year. Jupiter right brain, Gemini is a left brain sign. And then Mercury, ruler of Gemini, left brain, is going to go into Sagittarius, the sign Jupiter rules. Astrology calls it a mutual reception. They're in each other's sign, and they're polar opposites in the circle. By the way, Jupiter goes into Sag November 2nd. It is there for 2 months till January 8th, because it's going to have a retrograde cycle completely in Sagittarius. And so this is the truth versus lies theme that is going to come after the election. You know, especially if Kamala Harris pulls off the electoral vote majority, we're going to have all kinds of, lawsuits, vote fraud. I think Trump almost senses in some capacity his loss. And so every time he's losing, it's always got to be the other side cheating. There's never any self-reflection from a narcissistic personality unless they are absolutely forced into it. Well, this is what we might see coming up here with this Mercury retrograde. By the way, Mercury's retrograde November 25th, 22.5 Sag, all the way back to, hold on a second, got to get my color codes, December 15th at 6.5 Sag. November 25th through December 15th, from 22 to 6 Sagittarius. And by the way, during Mercury's retrograde cycle, it will make 3 oppositions to Jupiter. So, for those of you who are just hoping things will calm down after the election, please don't mess with the messenger. I'm just the messenger. But it will be pretty chaotic. So, search for the truth as best as you can. What would you have me know, Source? What would you have me do, Source? Saturn direct in Pisces. We have a bunch of little aspects going on. Those are kind of nice. We have, Mercury makes a waxing trine to Mars and water. Mercury makes waning sextile to Pluto and water, Earth. Venus has an opposition to Jupiter. Venus trine Chiron, all that going on. The little inner planets are going this, that, and everything. Half of the country will be happy, half of the country will be devastated or angry. November 3rd, remember I said right after Mars makes that opposition to Pluto? Mars goes into Leo 2 days before the election. Mars is in Leo November 3rd through January 6th. This is part of its retrograde cycle. Mars is already in its pre-shadow to its retrograde cycle, which is December 6th through February 24, 6 Leo to 17 Cancer. So we've just had Mars go through Cancer. And that's the emotional, perhaps, frustrations we've been seeing. There's all the, emotional themes that maybe have been coming up for us. Perhaps there's some familial stuff going on in some way. Mars going into Leo is like that burst of energy from our emotions to that fiery, element of Leo that just goes, oh, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. It lends itself to adding energy to the USA election, and in the states that can vote before the actual day, perhaps putting a jump into that. Mars in Leo. Leo is kind of like the subjective perspective of our universe. Sun rules Leo, center of our solar system. Mars in Leo, it is all about me. Donald Trump, by the way, has Mars natally in Leo. So does Kamala Harris. Mars goes retrograde before it gets to either one of their Mars in Leos. But just think about that. I have no desire, Mars, whatsoever to be president. I don't think that's going to be a desire I need to exhaust within my soul. Nope. But look what it takes for these two people to run, to do this in this consensus world. There's an example of Mars in Leo for you. It's, again, you've got to have the ego. You've got to have the will to put yourself out there. So when Mars goes retrograde, again, December 6th, 6 degrees Leo, one of these two people is just going to have their balloon popped, and that whole deflation that will come from not being the next president. Donald Trump is a Pluto and Leo generation, and I think by now we can all just say a narcissistic personality. They don't have good inner reflection. And that Mars and Leo will have a tough time with it if it's for him. He'll go even more bombastic and ballistic to the, point that, it's like, okay, we got to take him off the stage, so to speak. Kamala Harris will probably be a lot more gracious about it. So Mars is going to be in Leo until it goes retrograde. Really work with how your ego wants to be in charge in order to feel secure, really. Because I always like to say with the Leo energy, it really starts with a deep self-love. How can anybody else love you if you don't love yourself? And you can do all the Leo, drama queen, drama king stuff that you want, but, sooner or later that polarity, Aquarius, is going to shock you back into yourself, the inwardly self-love. And when we do that on deep levels, then that Leonian energy naturally magnetizes people to us, naturally magnetizes creativity with our desired nature, Mars and Leo. That'll be a little bit of what we'll have to review through this Mars retrograde. We'll also have Venus change signs in the first half of November. Venus goes into Capricorn November 11th to December 7th. November 11th through December 7th. Venus has a retrograde after Mars. It's not going to come until next spring. So Venus is still tooling along at a pretty good speed, and Venus is an evening star right now. I live in mountains. I'm not an early bird, and so I don't see morning stars of the planets very much. I usually watch them in the evening. But Venus is rising in the sky until January 10th. However, Venus is also, when it's rising, as both a morning star and evening star, Venus will make these conjunctions in the sky with the moon that are just beautiful to watch from a visual level. But they're also, those visible planets that our ancestors used to watch all the time. And so Venus will have a waxing moon, as we call it, a waxing aspect to Venus. November 4th, they'll meet about 21 degrees Sag, right where Mercury's going to go retrograde. And so the day before the election, is this going to spark a bit of truth? Stay tuned. We'll find out. But I just want to point out that, right now, for those of you who can see those evening skies, you want to be watching Venus. Venus in Capricorn gets serious. Venus has to have some time to process through its values, to process through what's important to it, to process through how it wants to give and receive in relationships in that way. Venus in Capricorn gets practical. That's part of the Capricorn nature. Venus in Sag has been, let's go have some fun. I don't want summer to be over yet. And Venus in Capricorn goes, well, okay, now I got to pay the bills. Okay, time to go to work. Time to be responsible, time to funnel my priorities of what's important to me and then put my focus in that direction. So it's okay to do that. Venus in Capricorn could easily create depression for whichever side of the USA public experiences the defeat in the USA election. Take a deep breath and center yourself in, self-love as best as you can. Interesting, in the news feeds out there, there's been different kinds of articles of how to deal with election anxiety or how to deal with depression after the election. Just Google it. You'll find it if you're in need of it. I always say, get outdoors, get out in nature, get away from your social media, get away from your electronics, have your reconnection with nature when you need that balance. And so Venus moving into Capricorn and on November 11th, Saturn going direct November 15th. That mid-November is going to kind of be when things start really sinking in post-election. I'm pretty sure I have the date, although I've seen others say a different date. Nope, never mind. I'm thinking December, not November. Cancel that little thought. So, again, as we move into closer to mid-November, the reality of how this presidential election will turn out starts to soak in, regardless of if there is some, shenanigans going on one side or another. Medium Monk, let me touch base with you. And listeners, you probably know I rattle on, and then when I'm all done, Medium Monk, hi.
The most important thing is to practice your personal power by getting out the vote. Make sure you're at least participating in what's going on, and get out there, Mars and Leo, and get excited, get empowered, but try to detach from the outcome. It would be my advice.
You're so good at that. Third house Pluto, Gemini, soul, medium monk. He's very good at just being able to take a deep breath and shoo, let it right on. Appreciate that, honey.
Well,
I appreciate that feedback from you.
We'll have to support each other, and we're here to support our Astro listeners and each other. So if you need a session with Star Lady Kim Marie, just give us a call, 605-348-5111. But until the next full moon, move with joy and passion on this always exciting and mutable journey to the core of our souls. Thanks for listening.